we are. Um, on this wonderful evening, kind of chilly in Philadelphia. Well, for those of you who may or may not know what I actually do, yes, I'm a priest, but there's different types of priests who have different jobs. In my own religious order, I'm in charge of all of the formation in the United States. We do not have our novitiate in the United States. We did when I was a student years ago. We don't do that now. So the way that formation in the United States for now, because it always is up to change, is that you enter the order, you go through the application process, you go through all the evaluations. It includes a psychological evaluation. And yes, I answered the questions truthfully. Even when they asked, "Are you fascinated by fire?" I did say yes, and they still let me in. So obviously, you can be somewhat crazy, but you can't be totally crazy. Um, Basically, when you go through all of the stuff and you're finally accepted, you're what they call a postulant. Postulancy lasts for the United States. It's a little different depending on which country you're in and stuff, but in the United States, postulancy is 1 or 2 years. It's never more than 2 years. If you need to be in the postulancy for more than 2 years, maybe you are not called to this life. Because when someone is ready for the novitiate, they go to the novitiate. And if after 2 years you're not ready, you're probably never going to be ready. And I can say that because I am the master of postulants. I'm in charge of the formation, the education, we call it formation, of our postulants. Think about them as clay, and I got to shape them into a vase. I got to help them with all of the different areas of formation. So there's the academic stuff, there's the intellectual stuff, there's the spiritual stuff. The hardest formation is the human formation, those human things that everybody really forgets about when they think about religious life. You have people living together that maybe never knew each other until they started living together. You have different personalities, different likes, different dislikes, different ideas about the church, different ideas about religious life, and you got to get along. That's not always easy. Some people are coming straight from high school. They've never been away from home. They're homesick. They got this, they got that. Some people have gone to school. They've been to college. They've graduated. They've lived in their own apartment. They've had their own life. They paid their own bills. You have a mix of everybody. I just pretend that everybody knows nothing, and then that way I'm not surprised when people don't know something. I mean, they don't know how to iron shirts because mommy always did the laundry and mommy always ironed. They don't know how to cook because, well, they lived at home and mommy always cooked. Um, they don't know how to make a bed. They never did before they came here. They don't know how to do this. They don't do that. I'm not saying that our guys are like that. I'm saying in general. Postulancy is all about all of that stuff. And people might say, well, what difference does it make? It's like, well, orderliness is close to godliness. And if we start setting good habits in the postulancy, we'll continue those good habits all the way through. If we don't learn good habits, we do bad habits. And that gets us in trouble. Start off right, you'll do okay. Anyway, when the postulancy is over, I'm in charge of the postulants, teaching them. They go to the novitiate. The novitiate is 1 year and 1 day. When you finish the novitiate, now in the novitiate you're learning about, you spend a month on each of the vows that we take. You're learning about the history of the order, you're learning about the history of the church, history of religious life, you're all kinds of stuff that you got to learn. At the end of the novitiate, you actually make your first vows. You profess your vows, and you are dedicating yourself to God and His church for 1 year. It's always for 1 year. If during that 1 year you decide, you know what, this was a mistake, I'm not supposed to be here, at the end of that year, those vows are done, and you're free to leave. Go back to your life before you entered the order, if you want. But for those who say, you know what, I still feel called to be here, this is still where I'm supposed to be, you renew those vows for another year. They're called simple vows because they are simple. They're for 1 year. They're not simple in what they require, but they're simple in the canonical stuff. Anyway, you are a novice for 1 year. It is not usually extended. If you do not make your vows at the end of the novitiate, you go home. It's a 100% or 0%. That's how it works. Then you're what they call a student. You're a student if you're in vows, but not in your final vows. So students are anybody who's survived the novitiate, they've made their vows, but they're not in. We have solemn vows, not every community does. If they're not in their final or solemn vows, they're called students, even if they're not studying. It's just what we call them. So, for the United States, you go through the application, you become a postulant. When you're a postulant, you come to Philadelphia and you have to suffer me. I'm in charge of the postulants and their education and formation. When I feel that they're ready, mind you, we're having like talks with each other individually and collectively. We have formation classes almost every day. Even when I was in isolation, we still had our formation classes. We just did it over speakerphone. So I would tell them what time to be together. I would call the phone, put it on speakerphone, and they would ask their questions. I would answer them. I would tell them what they need to do. We did our formation classes. I still taught them even when I was in isolation. So they did not suffer anything because for 3 weeks I was locked in my room. In fact, if anything, they were probably upset because they might have wanted to talk to me face to face, and that just couldn't happen. But now they can, and I'm sure they will. Um, Novices for us are not done in the United States. We haven't had the novitiate in the United States for some time. Last time we had a novitiate class, we sent them to Mexico. And in that particular novitiate house, you had one American, you had 3 or 4 Mexicans, and you had a couple from Honduras. So you had 6 or 7 because with Honduras, they do theirs in December. We did ours in August or September. I don't remember. So they had like staggering entrance and exit dates. So people were coming in and exiting at the same time. It's all the same information. They're just basically going in a big cycle. They go from the beginning to the end. When they get to the end, they start at the beginning. And wherever you started, you will eventually get everything. There's no prerequisites. It's just you have to know all the information. Um, but we sent them to Mexico, and it worked. We have a brother Peter, who was there. He had an interesting experience. It was a good experience. Um, Now we're sending them to Spain. In Spain, you have 2 provinces in Spain that are sending their guys there. Italy are sending their Italians there, and now the Americans will also be sending the Americans. So you'll have a larger class, all learning together. The former novice master was from Venezuela, even though he was living in Spain. The current one is a Spaniard. He's a canon lawyer like myself. So you have a mix of young and old. You have it in one of our houses that we've had since the 1200s. It was the place where St. Raymond Nonnatus was buried. I mean, it's a lot of history, and you're living that history in the novitiate in Spain. When you finish the novitiate and you make your vows, you come back to the United States and you get me again as the master of students. So I'm in charge of the students. So we have our formation class where we talk about the history of the order, we talk about the vows, continuing what we already learned about in the novitiate. But also, you're probably going to be going to, if you're going to be a priest candidate, you're going to the seminary, so you would have seminary class. If you're not going to be a priest, you're going to be a brother, you would go to another university to learn another, we'll call it trade for lack of a better name. It could be something like for example, Brother Peter is currently studying mass media production in communications. So he will be able to help with websites, he'll be able to help with making videos and other promotional materials. It doesn't have to be only for us, it can be for other provinces. Another one of our brothers is currently teaching in one of the Catholic high schools here in Philadelphia, Newman Goretti, Brother Dominic. So I mean, they do different things. So he went to school to study education and pedagogy and all that other stuff that you need to do to be an effective teacher, and now he's teaching. So he has his bachelor's and his master's and certification in education. So he went to school for that. But as a student going to school, you are still learning about the Mercedarian life, the order, and everything. So I would be in charge of all of the technical things like making sure people are registered, making sure everything is taken care of with the different universities or seminaries, but also to teach the ongoing stuff that you need to learn as a student. So I'm in charge of the postulants and I'm in charge of the students. So at the moment, to answer the question, but I wanted to give a little background so you guys understand how it works. I'm in charge of 3 postulants and 1 student at the moment. So there's 4 children under me. I'm the father of 4 children at the moment. I say that metaphorically and quasi-jokingly, but in a sense, I'm also the superior of the house, so I'm actually the head of the household of the 6 of us that are here. 7 when Father Eugene comes back from Florida. He's been helping our community down there. So with that in mind, I currently have 4 students that I'm working with that are preparing for the future of the church and the future of the order. So I know that was a long explanation, but and no one asked about the formation, but it kind of helps if you understand what a postulant is and what a student is and what's the difference between them all, you know? Again, thank you for everything, and God bless you all.